Welcome to the Schtick. Last week we saw Julia Gillard receive the very prestigious Jerusalem Prize, and we couldn't fit in her whole speech. So this week we're just ending with local issues. And to expand on the local issues, which were basically about anti-Semitism, racism, and Section 18C, which is also related to all that kind of thing that we have to put up with in our lives. We have with us a young lady called Sharyn Mittelman.
Hi.
How are you, Sharyn?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good to have you on.
Thank
now
you.
Tell the audience, what's your shtick?
Well, I'm a senior policy analyst at the Australia-Israel Jewish Affairs Council called AIJAC, and AIJAC advocates to government and media representing issues of concern to the Jewish community. So often it's got to do with Israel, and in this case we're also supporting the racial vilification legislation.
You're supporting it.
We support that it exists and should continue to exist.
That's right. Well, it's a real kind of tussle, and that's why we're talking about it today. And also I wanted to cover what AIJAC was all about. Now, the executive director is Colin Rubenstein.
That's right.
Who is a wonderful man, and he works very hard for the interests of the Jewish community in Australia and all over the world.
That's right. And we also have a monthly magazine that we put out called the Australia-Israel Review.
Air.
Air for short, and we have a blog called Fresh Air, so people can check out our website.
So every day there are people blogging with opinions.
That's right.
Yeah,
and I'm one of those people, so you might see my articles there.
So the Jewish community and a lot of the other multi-faith communities are all against the repealing of Section 18C.
That's right. Well, Section 18C has been around since 1995. It's a very important legislation because it makes it unlawful for anyone to commit an act that offends, insults, humiliates or intimidates people based on their race or ethnicity. And it's really important we have legislation like that in a multicultural society because it supports social cohesion.
Exactly, so true. And I think that something has to be done to try and stop this repealing of the Act. And what can we do to stop George Brandis, because he has promised consultation.
That's right.
But he hasn't consulted with the Jewish community yet, apparently.
Well, that's right. Senator Brandis has indicated an intention to make amendments to the Act at this stage to take out the offend and insult provision. But prior to the election, the coalition promised that there'd be consultations to any changes. So we would hope before any changes are made that the government would consult with the community stakeholders. And it's not just an issue that affects the Jewish community, like you mentioned, it affects all ethnic communities, and a lot of them have expressed their support for the current legislation. And we believe that the legislation has been really effective in the last 20 years. Only the most serious cases have gone to court.
Yes.
And we've set important precedents. For example, Jeremy Jones, who works at AIJAC, in his capacity at the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, took a case against Frederick Tobin, who was a known Holocaust denier. And in that case, the court decided that Holocaust denial equated to anti-Semitism and that it was unlawful and had parts of the website shut down.
So there have been effective cases that have gone through 18C.
That's right.
So it's a good thing.
Yeah, most go to conciliation at the Australian Human Rights Commission, and they're either thrown out or settled at that stage, and only the most serious ones have gone to federal court. So we think that the legislation in its current form is working and should be kept.
So we've got a show today which was, we're going into the next segment with Julia Gillard's last few minutes of her speech talking about 18C and her call to the community to stop it being repealed. And also we're covering Hanukkah, which has been the big event. I went to a few events, and we're going to end this segment now with 2 or 3 events that I went to. But in relation to the symbolism of Hanukkah, how's it related to 18C? How do you see that?
Well, I think 18C makes an important statement about multiculturalism and tolerance, and we need legislation to support that. And I guess on Hanukkah, the Greeks weren't letting the Jews be Jews. They were trying to encourage Greek culture, and there wasn't this respect for tolerance. And so, you know, today, thank God in Australia, we can live freely as Jews and practice our religion, and everyone has a right to be free of racism, and this legislation is an important step in promoting that in Australia.
And that's what the Schtick does too. The Schtick really works so hard to make everyone aware of people's diversity, of ourselves being Jewish and everybody else also tolerating us and us tolerating them. And it's been really wonderful to have you on the show, Sharyn. And we will find out more about AIJAC next year, because I want to inform the world and our viewers about the wonderful work that your organisation does.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.